So yeah, I'll go for it. So our pub is called the Old Justice. It's a kind of local pub in Bermondsey in Southeast London. We've been open now for what 14 months, I guess. Yeah, a year and 2 months. And it was a pub that had previously basically there's been a pub on site there for a long time. And the current pub has been on that site since the 20s, I believe. And yeah, it's a pub that was absolutely beloved by the local community, very much like a really central spot for them, and then was kind of shut for at least 6, 7 years before we opened it. It had been bought up by a developer who wanted to turn the whole thing into flats. And there was a big kind of local community campaign to save it, and they went back and forth but with help from the council for quite a number of years there. And eventually managed to stop the kind of ground floor of the pub being turned into flats, but the floors above it are all flats now. And the developer kind of ripped out all of that already, so was forced to kind of put in like the bar back in and a lot of the stuff around there. But when we got the keys to it in October 2022, the place was essentially a building site. And so we kind of went in there, which was a good opportunity for us. We managed to go in there and renovate the place ourselves because that was kind of all we had the money to do, and it kind of worked out nicely for us. There was a lot of learning and figuring things out with a lot of things we hadn't done before. But yeah, so we got the pub. Kind of took us about 5 months to do that. Got the pub open on the 13th of February, 23. And yeah, been going since then, really.
Yeah, so when you said you kind of it was good for you to start over and put your own stamp on things, is there like a bit of inspiration? Like, how is it different? Does it stand out as a pub? Is it unique? Like, have you put your own stamp on it, kind of thing?
Yeah, I would say yes, but I think also how do I put this? It's not necessarily a business where we wanted to have a huge amount of uniqueness to it. I think there's a lot of value in pubs. Certainly doing a lot of elements very traditionally, but just doing them well, I think is the main thing, and trying to execute all of those things extremely well. It doesn't have to be something that is wildly different to even a pub that's just down the road from us. Of course, our own stamp is going to provide that kind of uniqueness and things, but I think it's still important that there's consistency to it, and it's a place where people want to come back to every single time because they know exactly what they're going to get. They're going to get that kind of community feel to things. They're going to turn up and there'll be someone who they know, who they'll have run into before, who they can have a chat with and sit and have a drink with, no matter if they, come in on their own or not.
And I think this is a conversation that Will and I have very often. But I think one of the main things that was already always at the back of our thoughts was how you kind of build a pub in a place like Bermondsey, which is kind of very much still traditional London and has kind of kept its community roots. And that was super important to us. And then we're also like in our 30s. So it's how do you kind of bring the dynamic of people who are not from Bermondsey? Neither of us are from Bermondsey. But then how can you kind of bring two worlds and kind of let them live alongside, and kind of everybody finds their own kind of space in there. And it's quite rewarding after a year of opening to see that everybody notices it. Everybody loves the fact that it's both young people and people who are retired or people who have kind of already gone through most of their life, if I can say that way. But we really have a blend of those people, and we have a blend of people who live on the street next door, 2 streets away, who've lived there their whole life, and at the same time new people who kind of come in and are discovering Bermondsey. And is it rather, depending on why and where they come from, it can be like they've spent the afternoon on the beer mile, or they're walking the Thames pathway, and they kind of still feel like there's a space for them, and those two groups kind of co-live very nicely. So it's quite satisfying, I think, that way.
And what do you think your biggest achievement has been so far?
I mean, I think that's probably our biggest achievement. And the other big thing that Will and I always talk about is a pub is a public house, and we often forget that side of the house in the conversation. And like, how can we make a place homey? How can we make a place where people want to come back and spend time? But yeah, I don't know, Will.
Yeah, I think I think I'd agree with you on that. The amount of people who, as Paul was saying, have spent their whole lives there and remember this pub, and like the amount of customers who walk in, and then we have chats with them who are like, oh, I remember being 5 years old and having my grandmother's birthday party in here, like, 50 years ago, and kind of walking in and being like, oh, it feels the same, but it like not in a kind of way where they mean that like it's stale, it's stuck in a way it was 50 years ago, but you've created a feel that is very similar to that, and we feel welcome here. We feel like um you are trying to be part of that community, and we very much didn't, as Paul was saying there, we are two young guys in our 30s. We're not from Bermondsey. We don't want to come in and, I don't know, try and do something completely off the wall and not respect the history of the pub, and seeing people kind of come in and have real joy about the fact that they've got their local pub back really is a big achievement, I think, for the both of us, and we really enjoy that.
Yeah, amazing. And then on the other hand, like, what would you say your biggest struggle has been?
I mean, the current state of affairs, I'd say, is probably a big one. I mean, pubs are struggling at the minute, but when we hear about pubs struggling in the news, it's not pubs like us. It's chains that we talk about, and they're doing fine. We're independent. We have like no network support. We have like, this is just Will and myself.
Just us.
And how many years put together of experience and connections we have ourselves. But like, this is just the two of us who kind of don't come from business in studies, don't come from that, and just kind of got lucky and managed to kind of make this thing work.
But we are just two bartenders,
We are two bartenders. Like I think between the two of us, we probably worked about 40 years behind the bar. Like neither of us have like any family money kind of financing this and kind of making it hold up. We've managed to do it with our savings alone, without even going and taking a loan out. So I think the struggle is kind of, how do you kind of keep it going every week, whilst that's also probably our biggest achievement, managing to keep it going and so on. But I think the price of things is just insane. Like last week we got a price hike on two of our main products of 6.5%. So it's,
as that happens, you can expect that to happen every month, every 2 months to a lot of your products. And as Paul was saying there, there is a lot of, you do see stories in the news a lot about like the hospitality sector struggling, things like that. But always when those articles are written, they are by and large written about chains. They're consulting with chains like Green King pubs, like Wetherspoons, things like that. And on the actual independent level, it is so much more rough. We don't, purely in terms of things like stock, we don't have the purchasing power to be like, cool, we're going to buy all of your stock of lager or something so we can sell it at, Wetherspoons prices, that sort of thing. And so it becomes very tricky, I think, in terms of that. And especially when, a big part of how we've been approaching this kind of community pub aspect of it is we want to be able to keep as many things at really affordable prices as we can. Like, it's very important to us that we have a pint of lager at a fiver, a pint of Guinness at a fiver, a pint of cask ale at a fiver as well, at least one of those. And that honestly gets harder and harder every month to be able to do that. And we will still do that. It's still important to us, but it's crazy how much prices go up.
Until that's true, because those end up being our biggest selling products. Because I mean, in Zone 1 in London, where do you see a pint at a fiver? Like, it's very rare. It's becoming very rare.
Wetherspoons or nothing, like.
Yeah, literally. I mean, Sam Smith don't do it anymore either. But we'll try and keep on doing it as long as we can. But I guess that's just, I don't know how long we're pushing it. And we try and keep it going as long as we can, because for us it's so important that people can come and have a pint without it becoming, a pint is costing me close to an hour's wage, which is insane.
So like talking about kind of the energy crisis and the cost of living crisis and stuff like that, have you had to make any like specific changes in the way that you run the pub? So like, I don't know, have you kind of thought about different suppliers, or maybe use like energy saving lighting or stuff like that? Or
So I think
like,
the main thing for us has been in terms of the stock is honestly, yeah, we can't have as, the two of us, even 3 years ago, coming out of COVID, when we were managing a previous pub together, we had much more of ability to buy a wider range of stock, and things like that. And here we have had to start to be a bit more like, okay, we are going to have to bear price much more in mind than we've had to previously, and we might have to be a bit more picky about the certain products that we put on. But I think in general, I would say we've always been quite active with working with suppliers to get good prices. We don't use any wholesalers apart from our spirits and wines, all beers. It's important to us to just build relationships with particular breweries, get good prices that way. And I think as a result of doing that in times were less tough, now times are harder, that kind of pays off a lot.
And I think that's kind of also the one power of being totally independent, is being able to go to these suppliers, these breweries, and saying, well, if we can't talk about prices with you, we will go and talk with people who are okay to have that conversation. Because I think it starts there. It starts with the honesty from our end and from their end of being like, okay, realistically, that's our cost, and realistically, that's what we want to do. Will and I also have a kind of a quite hard line of our biggest cost has to stay our staff. And we kind of, we pride ourselves in that. We pay more than London living wage for working in a pub, which I think is quite decent. Knowing that we've been open for a year is, and I think it's about having these conversations more than, yes, you have to adapt, but a lot of the adaptability comes from actually having a knowledge of what those suppliers, what their costs are and what they can do. But yeah.
Okay. And then out of interest, like, what is your busiest time of year? Is it kind of like Christmas, or is it summer? And then, like, how do you deal with like the stress when it does get very busy?
So I think it's hard for us to say because we've only been open a year, and I think generally, from chatting to people who've opened up their own places and things like that, it's going to take you a couple of years before you see the rhythm of your place. Of course, in general, you can kind of go, okay, hospitality is going to be busier in Christmas, it's going to be quiet in January, or that kind of thing. But you really don't know. A venue can be a winter pub, a venue can be a summer pub, and we are very much still figuring that out. I think there have certainly been some months where we're like, yeah, exactly. Yeah, we're a bit of both. And there have been some months when we're like, oh, this has been a really quiet month. No idea why that is. We'll see if that's the same thing next year. We don't know. How do you deal with the stress of it being quiet in a certain month? Honestly, who knows? I don't think we would have got into this industry if we wanted regularity. And it is, there are changes you have to make when months are quiet. Things like obviously just staffing less people on. If you might normally have 3 people on a night, cool, you can have 2 that night, things like that. But that also then brings in the conversation of, well, it's important to us not to leave any staff without having the hours that they want, and of course, we are responsible for people being able to pay their rent and live their lives, and well, not just pay their rent, but be able to pay that rent and have money to see their friends, have time to see their friends, things like that. And it's, yes, you can make the trade-off by cutting hours when things are quiet, but you need to be aware of the kind of wider context of that for the team who you're responsible for. And also, again, without knowing when is just by and large going to be a quiet month for us at the moment, we don't want to risk necessarily understaffing because, well, what if it is just a busier month, and people come in and all of a sudden they've got to wait 20 minutes for a drink. You don't want that. So I think the answer is yes, there are quiet months, and yes, it is stressful, but we can't necessarily at the moment work out exactly a rhythm for that.
Yeah. Okay. And then, if you could just pick one thing, what do you think is your favourite part about running your own business and running your own pub?
I don't know. For me, it's the freedom of being able to kind of do things our own way, and the flexibility around that. I mean, the first year of opening a pub is pretty intense. It's probably pretty full on. But I think now what I love is coming into the pub and seeing it busy and seeing people happy and people enjoying their time there. and the value of just people coming up and saying, "Oh, thank you so much. I've had such a great evening tonight." Or our staff turning around and saying, "I love working here." I think
Yeah.
those things are kind of the thing that kind of keep me going, and are my favorite part of it all. Really, it's the human
Yeah,
side.
agreed. And the fact that that human side is so kind of um is so important and so much there when you are running a small business, and also a small business that is focused on community. Like, that is so, like, it's kind of, it's weird to see, like, we had a staff member who just went off for 3 months traveling. She came back and she was like, "Oh, I'm really glad to, like, be back at work with you guys." And it's like, cool, that's really actually
Yeah,
really
that's really
nice to
nice.
see. Weird, but great.
Yeah, definitely. I think, yeah, showing your staff that you value them and then showing your customers you value them as well always makes the difference, I think.
Yeah.
So how do you keep yourselves and your staff motivated if they're kind of having a bad day or something like that?
I mean, I think the fact that we have a team of several people, and they all are very supportive to each other. I mean, I don't know how much we can go into detail of, like, how do you keep your staff motivated, because that's a kind of a never-ending question. I think whatever we do works very well, because and that's probably another very rewarding part of our business anyway, is all our reviews mention our staff, and how great our staff are, and how attentive and welcoming, and full of energy, and so on. I mean, it's a job which is stressful. It's a job which is not for everyone. But I think people who enjoy it take joy in the fact that they get to chat with people. So I think it's, if it is very quiet, or if somebody's kind of feeling a bit ill at ease, it's about being there. Really, a lot of it is about being there, and for the staff to know that the door is always open for a chat, and then for them to feel supported in the moments of tension at work. I think that's
And that they know that, like, the business isn't an entity, it's all humans, it's all people, we can all talk to each other. And when, I think, so yeah, if we're talking about motivation, I think if someone's having a hard time, or if someone is ill, or has a long period of being sick, things like that, like, it's important to just have a personal chat with them about it, and not
Yeah.
them not be stressed about, in previous jobs when this has happened, oh shit, it's been really, really hard. It's more like, okay, cool, let's have a conversation face to face. What's going to be difficult for you? How can we look after you? If you can't work for a while, how can we make that easy for you? And yeah, just again, making sure that people know the door is open, that we're people, and that everyone is there to help each other. And in terms of just generally staff motivation, honestly, the best thing, pay your staff well, is just the kind of bottom line. Like, it's astonishing even now how many chains, are paying literally the bare minimum they can, like below London living wage, just at minimum wage, and just have huge staff turnover. And how many staff we get come to us and apply for a job and are like, "Oh, you pay really well." They're just inherently going to do a better job. Like, yes, staff incentives are good, things like that, but pay your staff well, respect them, and they'll respect you, and they'll respect your
Totally
customers.
agree. Yeah. And then, so thinking about the future, sorry, thinking about the
Sorry.
future, what are you most excited about, and do you have plans to expand?
Yeah, so our kind of main project at the moment is building a kitchen, because the kitchen used to be on the first floor of the pub, which is now flats, as we were saying there. And so we have a small space out back. So yeah, we've been working on building a kitchen ourselves. As we've said, we kind of came into this with barely enough money to get the keys, and so we've done all of the work ourselves, and that's been great. And so yeah, now we're trying to trying to build a kitchen ourselves out the back, a little kind of outhouse kind of style kitchen, and that's going pretty well. But Paul's kind of taken the lead on that, so he can tell you more about that.
I mean, there's not much to say. Hopefully, it'll be there by this summer. I guess that's the first step.
Okay. And then, so what advice would you give to somebody else just starting a pub or a business?
God, I saw this question
It
when you
can
sent
be
it over, and I was
anything.
like, I honestly don't know. I think, okay, I would say number one, don't do it on your own. Have a business partner, have someone who you work well with, is incredibly important. there will be countless times when one of you will need to step in for the other one, and that just needs to be okay between the two of you. It's, I think, crazy to kind of try and bear the load on your own. And of course it can be done, but I think it is significantly easier
On
and
the first business,
better for you.
it's very tricky.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's the kind of thing you can probably consider when you've done that a few times, but I think having a business partner is just all the questions, all the doubts you have, you can kind of share them with somebody and often get a perspective you didn't have, and it goes both ways. As Will was saying, when one of us needs to step down, the other one can step in, and like we'd never question each other's choices when the other one's not there. You have conversations about things, but yeah, knowing the person you're going into business is obviously also very important. But I think find somebody you trust and do it with them rather than alone is a very good piece of advice.
And I know it's not always possible necessarily to know how you've worked with someone, and myself and Paul have been very lucky that we literally met each other working together, and we worked together for quite a while. But knowing how you work day to day with someone, I think is hugely important, because when you're running a business, they are going to be the person you see the most and spend all of your time with.
It's pretty insane.
Yeah, I can imagine it definitely helps to have the right person then.
Yeah.
And then if you guys could go back to the start of your business journey, I know it wasn't that long ago, but would you change anything, or are you happy with how things went?
I honestly don't think so. I don't think I would. Paul?
No, I don't think so either. Maybe do the electrics differently. No, I'm joking. No, I don't think so really. I think we've been very lucky. I think it's been going very well. I think we've worked well together. Yeah, I think it's.
There's nothing like glaring that I think I can identify as being like, oh, if we'd have done that really differently, things would have been super easy. And now, no, there are challenges, and yes, going back in time, you could have done them differently, but that was all part of the process, all part of learning, and yeah no huge
Sometimes
regrets.
It's good to have like learning curves, isn't it, and kind of learn from not mistakes, but things that you could have done differently.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay,
I think especially in the pub industry, I think that is, or hospitality in general, I think honestly most people who enjoy the job enjoy learning on their feet. Like it's and so that just is our style, and we like that.
I can imagine it's very fast paced, and you're kind of like every day is a bit different, so you're kind of always.
But that's also the kind of rewarding thing I think about it is honestly, you make changes, you deal with things, and you see the results in the moment a lot of the time, and that's quite nice. You get that payoff straight away, and that's quite good.